Two guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey and Kyle Theige.
My bad. I've produced podcasts before, I swear to God.
There it is. What's up, man? How's it going?
All right, here we are. Hi, it's Phil. It's Kyle. What I was saying before I forgot to actually bring us up into this podcast and turn our mics on was, so we were going to record this yesterday and had a million things to talk about yesterday. But then I'll just say it. You got a new job. You don't really know anyone in your new job, and you're like, oh man, I got invited to lunch and I need to make some more work friends at my new job. So yes, Kyle, go make some new work friends. And we'll just record tomorrow. And then little did we know that in those 24 hours, Karl-Anthony Towns would just go off on a PatBev podcast about how great and game-changing he is and how the Nuggets winning a championship was one thing, but look at what we did making the playoffs. So we'll get to all that. Or we could dive into, I am 55 players into my top 100 Timberwolves list.
When you texted me that the other night, I laughed so hard. We did do that podcast on from the reader or from the listener where we kind of did the 100 list. I noticed the best thing that came from that for me was finding out the mute this conversation button on Twitter because I posted the top 100 and I think it had 192 comments. And that was just a little too much for my old cell phone to handle. So
wow, you muted it.
I had to mute it just because there were so many people that were like, oh my God, I forgot about this guy. Or this guy should be higher. So it was a great conversation starter, but before next season tips off, I do need to spin and pivot back to you and say, okay, what are Phil's top 100? Because I know yours are going to be vastly different. And, you as a podcaster just in general, when it's all said and done, I think people will refer to you as changing the game.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm hoping people say when I finally hang it up and, take the family out and enjoy life for a little while. You know what? I was saying this on the show with Judd.
Yep.
And for and there might be people that just listen to Flagrant Howls, and so if you haven't heard some of the clips, they're all over the internet right now. But Karl-Anthony Towns, one of the many things he said in this PatBev sit down was that, and I want to get the right quote here, so I'm not misquoting him. Quote: "When my time is up and I retire and I go off into the sunset, etc., there will be people that say I changed the game." And he's referring to being a 7-foot unicorn who can dribble, drive, and shoot threes. He is maybe the greatest shooting 7-footer in the history of basketball. So those things are true. And we can sit here and debate, all right, guy, can you really change the game if you're not playing in May and June? The real game changers. Does Steph Curry change the game in terms of kids shooting half-court shots every time down if he's only doing it in February and not in June, right? Mm-hmm. So we can have does Michael Jordan change the game if he's getting bounced in the first round every year, right? Like that. So there's a whole, but my point is, even if you did change the game, Nikola Jokic has changed the game, right? Mm-hmm. For a big man who automatic triple-double every night. He's a 7-foot point guard, basically. You don't need to say it out loud about yourself, right? Mm-hmm. That was kind of my main thing. Even if it's true, and I don't think it is for him, I don't think he has changed the game, but even if it's true, let other people say it for you. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of goes on the pile of things about his zero self-awareness personality that kind of drive me crazy. So I'm trying to balance, Kyle, how much more do people who listen to this show need to hear another Phil Mackey rant about Karl-Anthony Towns narcissism or whatever it is? And so I don't know. It's like, dude, even if does Dirk Nowitzki go on podcasts and talk about how he changed the game for 7 foot? I don't know. Maybe someone can find a quote, but it's like, just do it in May or June and then maybe say it out loud.
So I have a lot of thoughts, and neither of us, I don't think, when it comes to if this was politics, I don't think we're either left or right on Karl. I think you lean a little more towards I've had enough, and I lean.
What's left? Is left trade him for a second round pick?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not quite that left on Karl.
I lean a little more towards and maybe it's just because I talk to him every now and then, in the locker room or around when I'm around, but just kind of knowing who he is. I'm with you on why say it, right? But to circle back, because I was looking at some notes, the idea that he changed the game. I think he entered the league in 2015. The year that he entered the league, Kevin Love had already made 584 3-pointers. So he wasn't the first big man to start shooting threes. Now,
could you, to defend Cat, could you split hairs? Because I actually did this last night too. Could you split hairs and say, at the time we thought Kevin Love was 6'10" because that's what he was listed at, but now it's come out that he's actually 6'8". That really a 6'8" player shooting threes is not the same as a 7-foot player shooting threes. So I will defend Cat a little on that height difference.
Wow, you're already pivoting. This whole pod is
moving to
blowing
the
up.
right. Look at this.
On a more, and this is more of like for a new segment I'm working on called Dr. Phil, but really, truly, all jokes aside, I think Karl's like 27. And I've just been kind of thinking about this because, like, I have, as anyone who knows me, been a late to mature in life. So he's 27. He doesn't have like any kids. He's not married or anything. You know, like John Morant has a kid. Like some of these other younger guys are 21, 22, have kids. Everyone that you talk to that like knows Karl, not just like Timberwolves people, but say he's like the nicest guy, like truly compassionate, great teammate behind the scenes. I just think, and we've said this before, he's just really weird. And I don't think he's had a lot of reasons to like, I don't want to say grow up, but he's a 27-year-old kid. So think about when I was a kid, like he gets on these podcasts with Paul George, which I actually thought that one was a pretty good pod, but he gets with PatBev, right? He looks up to PatBev. That podcast is going all out of control. And I really think, just like me on Twitter, he just says things to say things. Do I think he means it? I don't know. But if he does, that would be the thing that is pushing me a little more towards the left side of this political discussion, because you can't have that guy thinking that stuff a couple months after. I know I'm tying this all together, but when you know Tim Connolly says this is Ant's team, everything we do moving forward is about Ant. Some of the quotes you get from Karl is like, the self-awareness that I preach on this pod in all realms of life, I can't be like, you got to have self-awareness, and then be like, well, Karl's fine. I also think he's just trying to be like, you know, confident, but there's so many things that Karl says that just don't come out the right way. And I'm with you, going back to your beginning question, just don't say it, right? Like, I think there's guys in this league that have a lot of confidence that don't say it. And I think if you have to come out and be like, say, hey, I'm strong, you're probably not strong. Yeah. If I have to say, hey, I'm rich, you're probably not rich. So I think sometimes you can just be that thing without having to say it. I do think Karl is one of the most unique athletes in the league. You know, like, look at all the other number one picks right now or top drafted guys, like the Zion situation, the Josh situation. Karl's worst thing he's done since he entered the league in 2015 is just been awkward. You know what I mean? No player, I mean, the success isn't there, Phil, right? There is no second round, third round in the playoffs. He's not demanding trades. He's not, you know, trying to get coaches fired. I think he's just really awkward, and that stuff comes out at the biggest moments. And then if Cat says it, the internet just cuts it up and grills him. And he's been grilled for 24 hours, and some of it's rightfully so.
Yeah, Draymond Green posted a bunch of laughing emojis at one point. But then, of course, then it just turns into a food fight. Then people jump in on Draymond, and they're like, well, Cat's better than you right now, guy. What are you? Where are you? You guys got bounced early in the playoffs or whatever. You're punching teammates. And I saw Ryan Russillo tweet something like he woke up this morning still thinking about that Cat quote from yesterday. But I mean, it's like if you pulled the NBA right now and said, okay, players, fans, media, everyone, what's the Karl-Anthony Towns word bubble right now? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you did the same thing for Jokic, for instance. And by the way, 5 years ago, one of those guys, I think 5 years ago, they were both like on a pretty good trajectory because Jokic had kind of emerged. But I think there was a time where Cat was definitely on a higher trajectory career-wise than Jokic because of being number one overall, et cetera. But if you did the word bubble now with Jokic and Karl-Anthony Towns, the things that Cat is saying about himself that people are going to say, I changed the game. I think those are the words that would be in the Jokic word bubble. The words that would be in the Cat word bubble, unfortunately, are words like soft, whiny, this isn't one word, but comes up short in big playoff games, right? Like pouts and whines, maybe even unserious when you compare him to some of the other big time, you know, the best players in the NBA that play deep into the month of May and early June. So there's when we talk about self-awareness, there's what he wants people to say about his game, which I think is what came out on that podcast. But then there's what people actually say about his game right now. And I don't know if he's not aware of that gap or if he's hyper aware of that gap. And he says stuff like he said on the PatBev podcast to sort of make up. Because there was another one, too. There's another snippet going around where he's talking about the first of the back-to-back playoff runs with PatBev.
Yep.
How those guys had to kind of cobble it together. It was Chris Finch's first year, right? First full year as coach. And they got off to kind of
full year. Yep.
Got off to a weird start, and they had 4 months to kind of get their bleep together and make a run to the playoffs. And he was saying, I mean, Denver had 4 years of gelling. So like he basically said what we did is more impressive than when Denver did. Like stuff like that, where he's trying to validate and justify maybe shortcomings rather than just maybe owning them or looking in the mirror. So there's a whole like psychological experiment to be done on some of the things that are being said. So,
and go back to the word thing. Like there are words right now that are just like comes up short, soft. Some of those words that are pretty, aggressive in terms of like no one wants to be called soft. And then this is where I go back and forth and I'm in the middle. It's like, it's not one of the phrases isn't coach killer, right? Or, bad team. So there's like these things that you get thrown around on a lot of guys in the NBA. But if you can, this to me just all comes back to winning. If you win, I mean, even James Harden, right? Like he's never really had that signature playoff moment, but by winning an MVP and just putting up the stats he has, like he's kind of just been able to push off some of those tags because he does, have big games and, a playoff round or something. Karl's just never had that. So I think winning would allow Karl to kind of get the last. I mean, truly winning and losing is what you get the last laugh in all of professional sports.
Yeah.
I also think too, as we talked about every week for the last 3 months, like this culture thing, Nuggets culture, Heat culture, to me, this just all comes back to every one of these guys. And I know this for a fact. Every one of these guys has like a group around them. They're mostly friends that they grew up with, maybe some agents, maybe some people in marketing or whatever. Karl has a group, Jaden has a group, all these guys. More of these athletes, listen to this soapbox. More of these athletes need guys like me or you in their circle, just because I have friends like that. Yeah. I have friends like me.
Cat needs me in his circle. That's what he needs.
Like, for example, just a peek behind the curtain. Like Dane Moore is one of those guys for me, and vice versa. Like, if I just did something kind of out of control or out of line, like my friends would just check me on it. They'd be like if I get a birdie golfing, I'm not gonna be like, man, I'm really good at golf, because they would be like, buddy, you just bogeyed the first 4 holes. Like, check yourself. I don't think Karl has a lot of that in his circle. And from a bigger organizational standpoint, this is why I go back to the number one thing that has to happen in December or March or whenever Glenn Taylor gives the skeleton key finally over to Mark Lowry. You got to bring Garnett back in, because I thought, and maybe it was just because he was young and wet behind the ears, Karl was like the best polished version of himself from a media standpoint during that time when Garnett was here. And again, now he was young, but I don't think Karl's saying like, I'm a revolution, I'm changing the game if Kevin Garnett's like in his ear more. And that's what I've always wanted Kevin Garnett to be, like this weird chief consultant officer for the Wolves. It just helps talk to some of these guys and be like, dude, you can't say that stuff. Come on. Yeah. Like you got to win before you can start puffing out your chest.
KG as the head of Wolves PR. Let's make it happen.
Let's make that happen.
Can you imagine? Just time for 2 more questions for Coach. Okay.
he just FUs all the way out of the press room. So no, it was tough. The podcast, if you listen to the whole thing, I think some of the quotes are a little less aggressive or a little less, I don't know, embarrassing if you get some of the sentences that are after it. But in general, yeah, he said like what we did in the play-in was better. That you said that's a thing you said, and that's going to get barbecued, especially in 2023 on Twitter. The same with just your ability to say that I'm changing the game when you just watched a guy that you was in your category, right, or of player a couple of years ago and has far exceeded what you've accomplished. So I know Karl's equally as big on what he's accomplishing outside of basketball, and that stuff is really good and what he's been through. But again, I just come back to like, I'm so into self-awareness, Phil, and if it applies to everyone. It can't just be, me or you. Like, you got to have better self-awareness.
Yeah. It reminds me, it's neither here nor there, but my wife and I have a running joke. She one time was talking to a friend or something, and she said, sometimes I think I'm too self-aware. And the person said, that's called being insecure. Actually, there's a fine line there somewhere. So I don't know. I guess maybe this is a good transition because you did happen to reschedule this podcast on a Reckless Speculation Thursday here on Scorner. I was going to say my final thoughts on this are I'm really curious to see what pops up over the next month or so because we have the draft. Dude, the draft is in a week.
Yep.
And that's going to could be fireworks. There's so many dominoes that need to fall before you get to any sort of Timberwolves related thing. I think there's the Damian Lillard domino needs to either fall or stay officially. And then there's probably a Bradley Beal domino now. And like the Miami Heat are this linchpin in the equation here. So does the dominoes game get to Karl-Anthony Towns? Do the Wolves run it back? All of this is going to become much more clear in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In fact, if you're, maybe you're relatively new as a Timberwolves follower or fan because they haven't gone to the playoffs very often, and you might check out when the season's over. This is a great month, maybe 5 weeks to check back in.
100%.
Because this is like the most fun offseason speculation period once the season ends, leading up to the draft, the week between the draft and free agency, and then there's like a 2-week period after July 1st. So we'll have you covered here on Flagrant Howls. Yeah. I do have a list of some updated, workshopped Karl-Anthony Towns trade ideas from the internet. If you'd like to just
I bet you these are
play
great.
the yes or no game. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I feel like some of these are from hoopshabit.com. And I almost feel like there's like a lifelong Timberwolves fan putting together these trades on hoopshabit.com. Because some of these are just automatic yeses. But I'm just going to throw you some ideas here. There's been no actual credible reports about a Karl-Anthony Towns trade. There's been no shams or Woj bombs or anything that say the Wolves are considering or this team is considering. It's all just theorizing about the luxury tax apron next year, the salary cap conundrums, etc. Towns was asked about the rumors on the PatBev podcast, and he said the Timberwolves. He basically said the rumors are as true or false as the Timberwolves, or he said Minnesota, I guess, wants to make them. So he's just kind of like, well, whatever. If they want to trade me, they can. Whatever. I'm trying not to.
He's just saying stuff to say stuff. I mean, that was actually the one I took most offense to because I do know, like behind the scenes. I mean, could they move him at some point? Yes, we've talked about the CBA and all that stuff, but he doesn't want to leave. I mean, he has a little bit of like that Damian Lillard thing with not only the loyalty, which again is probably why I cop for him more than others do, just because I grew up a Minnesota sports fan. There's not a lot of players that want to actually call this home. But the organization likes him too. I mean, he's in a good spot. He's got power. Like he's treated probably better than he is on the court. And I think he's really good, but he's treated like Dame is treated in Portland. But yeah, just like that too. Like the rumors are as true or false as Minnesota wants them to be. Like, I don't know, man, between that and Tim Connolly being so yes or no when they were like, are you going to stay here? Just like someone in leadership or someone in that organization, like just, I don't want to get canceled. Just do your job. Just do your bleeping job and like put an end to some of this stuff because it doesn't help your cause or the culture you're trying to build when you constantly have all these stupid things. Even if you're saying them just to troll people, it does nothing for the organization. Sorry, rant.
No, I definitely, I hear you. And I don't think you're going to get us canceled with that take. So here's a couple trade ideas for you here from the internet. We'll start with this one from NBAanalysis.net, one of my favorite reckless speculation websites. The Toronto Raptors acquire a half decade of Karl-Anthony Towns with that big contract about to kick in.
Okay.
The Timberwolves get 2 first-round picks. So you get the number, is it 12 or 13 pick from them this year? It's like a fringe just inside the lottery. And then a 2026 first-round pick a few years down the road. You get OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr. And those guys are Gary Trent Jr. I think has 1 year left in his deal, and then
might be a free agent. But just that idea in general, I think we can run with, even if there's some contract stuff that we're not like.
Yep.
You're basically bringing in a couple more kind of wing players.
3-point. Yeah.
To cover some of that 3-point shooting, just more wing players to kind of surround around Ant. And I guess you kind of, just be playing like a 4, not a traditional 4-out system, whatever, but you'd have Rudy and then you just have a bunch of guards and kind of 6'5", 6'8" guys around him. I do really believe that at some point, if they pull the lever on trading Karl, that Toronto's like one of the 3 teams I'd be the most interested in, because both of those teams have what the other could use. The Raptors don't really have a big guy. They traded for Jakob Poeltl at the deadline, but they don't really have a long-term guy there. And maybe Karl down the road when we figure this all out is a change of scenery guy, right? So I like that idea for both teams.
I love this idea. I guess I love getting a couple really interesting assets that are under the age of 27 and a couple draft picks. Like if you can get that type of balance and value, I'm here for it. I worry a little bit about the contract situations, but again, like you're going to have to shed contracts anyway. So
Yep.
You know, at some point you're going to have to trade for a contract that expires, or you're going to have to say goodbye to some chunk of money, I guess is what I'm saying. In the next like 15 months or so. So that one's something like that would be really interesting. And you'd actually be net gaining 3-point percentage because you'd be replacing Cat with good 3-point shooters. And you'd also be replacing some of the Jordan McLaughlin, Jalen Noel minutes of guys who couldn't hit a 3 to save their lives last year with like Gary Trent Jr. minutes or whatever. All right, let's try this one here from Hoops Habit, the aforementioned website. The Thunder get Karl-Anthony Towns. So the logic here would be they have a ton of first-round picks. They've got one of the best young guards in the NBA in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Would they want to add a Robin to his Batman and make a climb up the standings? So they would give up to get Karl-Anthony Towns and pair him with Gilgeous-Alexander, 3 first-round picks, Chet Holmgren, who's yet to play an NBA game, and Jalen Williams, the 6'6" shooting guard who showed a lot of potential last year, 12th overall pick last year. Thoughts on that one?
I did kind of get down this rabbit hole, and Thunder fans hated that one. And it goes kind of back to like, what is Karl's value around the league? And it also goes back to you promoting the pod and being like, these next couple of weeks are going to be really exciting, because every fan base right now, it is so weird, but you kind of just get pulses on Twitter. Every fan base right now thinks your player sucks and their assets are really good.
Yeah.
So I thought the Thunder were like, why would we ever trade Chet for Karl-Anthony Towns? And that's where I was like, all right, buddy. I don't know. Like, I really like Chet Holmgren, but I think Karl eats more than Chet weighs right now in life. So
I think Chet's weight is a real question. He also was a foot. He broke his foot, right?
Yeah. So in the Pro-Am out in Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah. Literally down the street from where I used to live.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a 20-year-old 7-footer with foot problems. You know, that's a red flag right there. So, but I still like this type of trade. Again, you'd be getting a couple really interesting young players plus 3 first-round picks. You'd probably have to throw a salary filler in here too. This is where like I don't understand. Do Holmgren and Williams somehow add up to like
I don't think
75-80% of Towns' $36 million?
I love people that produce content. If you go to the gym, no matter how hard you work, I respect that, because showing up is the hardest thing. If you produce content, it's the hardest thing. I do not believe the author of this did a ton of research.
No, I don't
because
think so
there are
either.
some salary deficiencies, and we might be trading guys that are actually free agents. But again, in general, it's that idea, Phil, of a team that has a bona fide star, and that's what Shai is, putting some of their possible star pieces on the table to bring in someone else who would be like that second banana. Kind of why I always thought that the Lillard and Karl combo made more sense than maybe Blazers fans do, just because I think that's a really dynamic duo. Do they have the pieces around them to make it work and take that leap? I don't know, but that was a good idea. And also too, when it comes to picks, OKC has plenty to offer. So another creative idea that might not actually make sense, but a good idea.
Yeah. By the way, just officially on Gary Trent Jr., he is expected. I don't think it's happened yet, but he is expected to not exercise the player option. So,
okay.
You know, again, we're just workshopping here.
Yeah, we're just
workshopping.
This is what they do at Mayo Clinic Square. They just kind of get everyone in the room,
just kick it around,
a couple coffees, and Tim just says, "All right, give me your best trade idea."
You know, or they hop on a Bennington pontoon from Power Lodge and Miller Marine. You know, what do you say? You guys want to hop on a Bennington, do some trade speculation out on a lake somewhere? Okay, you can pick your power and head to the Power Lodge. Locations in Brainerd, Onamia, and Ramsey, and Miller Marine in St. Cloud, the largest Bennington dealer in the country, from what my sources tell me. and get into a brand new Bennington pontoon for $28,888 or finance it for $288 a month. Whatever you need, they've got it with over 300 pontoons in stock. Powerlodge.com or millermarine.com. Okay. Let's keep the speculation train going here real quick. One more. Speculation. And then we can shift to a different topic here. Because sometimes people get mad that all Mackey wants to do is trade cat on these shows. Wow, the internet keeps producing fun ideas for trades, though.
I'm gonna give you my own after this, because I have a trade idea that doesn't involve Karl, and it's more just designed. Just a quick 50 seconds. Twitter sucks right now, just because I don't know what's real and not real, and I see all these things, and then these like aggregators pull these trade ideas that come from like some mom and pop podcast, just like you and I are running with the Wolves.
Correct.
So
yes,
I have a mom and pop pod or a trade idea involving the Timberwolves and the Mavericks I'd like to give you after this, but you go first because you got a good Karl one.
Okay, so this one is with the Rockets, and this one logically makes some sense. So the first domino would be James Harden hitting free agency, wanting to go back to Houston, where he had a great chunk of his career. He enjoys living there, and there's a lot of rumblings that he wants to go back to Houston. But my guess is not going to go back to Houston and play with a bunch of 20-year-olds and a bunch of future first-round draft picks. So if Harden goes to Houston, are they going to look to leverage some of the assets to acquire another player like a Karl-Anthony Towns? And now you got Harden, Towns, and whatever else is left on the roster. So the Rockets would get Cat, and the Wolves would get Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and this year's 4th overall pick.
I saw that one, and I really like Jabari Smith. This is nerd stuff. I just think he'd be a really interesting fit alongside a Jaden and a Rudy Gobert in that front court. I'm kind of on the fence, if not falling off it, on Jalen Green. I just don't know if that's a winning player. Super young, has so many years left in front of him, dynamic score, but I don't know where that fits. I mean, if this actually was a real thing, I would maybe try to loop in a third team to push Jalen out and bring something else in. But there are some interesting pieces there. And I also think, again, like a Karl, I mean, I'm not trying to get rid of him right now. I just think that he would be a good fit alongside of James Harden, right? If you had some more kind of defensive wings around those guys, I think a pick and roll between him and Harden, a pick and roll between him and Dame would be pretty dynamic. You saw how good James was running it with Joel Embiid, and Karl isn't the low post guy that Embiid is, but he can spread the floor more. So that was another interesting one. The Jalen Green thing, I don't know if that guy is like, and I don't know how many more young guys I want to bring in that are just throwing the ball at the basket all the time when it's like, nope, this is Ant's team. Like, give him the ball.
See, that's where like a trade like this, you wouldn't be padding another young player with like the Portland idea. You'd at least be getting Anthony Simons and like the number 3. And not that Simons is this like mature, but he's been in the league for 4 years. He's not 19 years old. He's not 20 years old. So you're at least you'd be diversifying your age there. This Rockets trade, you'd literally be getting kids. And so the 3 things you'd be getting are 2 kids and a 19-year-old who you draft 4th overall.
Yep.
That feels like a little aggressive going to the matchup with Anthony Edwards' age timeline idea. So,
and I don't think that trade, no matter what we think, I know you've made many good points that Karl hasn't really shown to be a winning player, but I don't think Karl has necessarily shown to be a losing player. I think he might just be more of a net neutral. So far, I think, and the Rockets haven't been trying to win games, but I don't know if those Rockets players are winning players. And this all ties back into like wanting Ant to never really take a step back in his career. And I think that deal specifically kind of takes a step back and puts you on a trajectory. It's like, well, we might just be a lottery team, and that's not what you're trying to do now.
Yeah. So anyways, those are just some of the latest ruminations from
I like
Karl-Anthony Towns online trade workshop, which changes every day.
Every Timberwolves trade I've seen has made the other teams really mad, like their fan bases. So no, I was just cooking something up because this is what my brain does at night, but also I know I just want to see like if some of these trade ideas that are getting aggregated are coming from people like me, but they're being reported as if they are real. And I'm just losing my mind.
And this is the beauty of it. What's happening is guys like you and me and whoever are going onto websites like NBAanalysis.net or or you can search any of the Canis Hoopus of Toronto or whatever, right? And it's fans and media just kind of having a good time speculating, some educated speculation. But then it winds up on Pat Beverly's podcast where he's asking Towns about the trade rumors.
Yes,
and the trade rumors are mostly coming from media and fans, admittedly, because it's a fun exercise. And it is rooted in logic because at some point they have to get rid of one of these salaries. So it's not out of complete thin air. But until like Woj or Shams comes out and says the Minnesota Timberwolves are open to trading Karl-Anthony Towns, it's just fun speculation right now.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong. Again, I cut my teeth at Canis Hoopus. Like, I love that site. And that's where sometimes the fans have the most creative ideas. But also the people that push back are like, I'm so tired of hearing about Karl-Anthony Towns trade rumors or all this stuff. It's like, truly, what else is there to digest in late May, early June? Because I'll tell you right now, there's no Naz Reid contract stuff. There's no Nickeil Alexander. Like, there's no updates on that. That's not going to happen until July. Like, do you want me to break down? I've heard Wendell Moore has looked good at practice at Mayo Clinic Square these last couple of weeks, but like, can we do 3 weeks on Wendell Moore making jump shots in the morning? No. So, yeah, I just think it's all funny that like you and I can come up with stuff like the Dallas Mavericks receive Rudy Gobert and Taurean Prince.
Is this your deal?
This is just one I came up with.
This is the one. Okay.
Yeah, but this is
Reckless speculation.
This is just like out of the Jake Graff's mentality of like, this is the type of stuff I'm actually seeing being reported after it gets aggregated in a couple thousand retweets. It's like the Mavericks receive Rudy Gobert and Taurean Prince. The Timberwolves receive Josh Green, Maxi Kleber, Dak Prescott, an actual Shark Tank, Dirk Nowitzki's autograph, number 10 pick in 2023, and the 2025 first round pick. And then that'll like blow up, and all of a sudden it's like a news story that's like on Hoops Hype. What was it? Was it the Shark Tank or the Dak Prescott?
It was the Dirk autograph, I think, is what it was.
But these next couple weeks are going to be messy, and like everyone's going to be thrown into trade rumors. I mean, luckily the guy that has avoided most of this so far is like Ant. But I'm just telling you now, man, we are just the nature of this beast. We are probably 24 months or less away from just Ant being thrown into all this stuff. Where they bow out again in the first round. Other teams like, we'll give you this for Ant. We'll give you the Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, all the other white guys from Miami, and then like one ticket to live for Ant. It's like, Jesus, can we not?
It is kind of funny that Ant has been. It's very obvious that he's untouchable. So I have seen zero ruminations about him. Now in a couple of years, if the Wolves don't make it as far as they need to, there's all sorts of vultures that will circle and try and land him. But hey, let me ask you this about, because I'm looking at Twitter right now and just seeing pictures of the Nuggets parade, and you got
congratulations to the Nuggets, by the way.
Yeah, they won the championship since we last podcasted. And Malone's wearing a "Put This in Your Pipe and Smoke It." It's a Larry O'Brien Trophy T-shirt. He's amazing. Does it make you feel better about Tim Connolly that he pretty much built that ish in Denver, right? He built like 90% of it. Now they did the new front office did add a couple interesting sprinkles on top to put that team over the edge, like the championship edge. But do you feel better about Tim Connolly now that the Washington stuff has settled and the team that he architected for a decade actually won the championship?
Probably going to repeat some of the things that I've said before, but this whole season started back in Summer League when Dana and I were there, and we met all the DNVR guys. That is they don't have like Denver Nuggets don't have an athletic reporter. Their games aren't really on TV. Like DNVR kind of is the main. It's kind of like their Score North out there that covers sports, and it's really cool. It's part of like the All Cities media or whatever. And I got to meet those guys. That's when Tim came on, and they were all raving about Tim and the culture he set. A week later, or actually maybe a week prior to meeting those guys, he makes the Gobert trade. From what I know and what I believe at this point, I believe that had just as much to do with ownership as it did with Tim, but that's neither here nor there. I also really don't want to talk about the Gobert trade every day for the rest of my life.
I don't either.
I do, and this is going to sound kind of sappy, but I do. There were moves made by Kelvin Booth that put that team over the edge, or kind of put it, over the finish line, and then just getting a guy like Jamal Murray back, Nikola Jokic just kind of becoming a Super Saiyan. But they still really talk about how like Tim stayed loyal to Mike Malone when the easiest thing to do would have been just to let Mike Malone go. I know you and I have been critical of Finch at times, and this past season kind of being maybe his least successful as a coach. But I do wonder if just sometimes, just as easy as it is in sports to just be like, I'm so tired of that, let's get another one. I'm so tired of that, let's get another one. That's not proving to be the way some of these teams figure it out. Or, you do need the consistency. You do need to get through those bad times before you can find the really good times. So I know it sounds like I'm apologetic, and I'm not, because I have a lot of complaints about how Tim has handled some stuff, but I do think that the way he built that team, that Aaron Gordon trade, which was, I think, maybe the most valuable thing he did other than like drafting Jokic in the second round, was massive. Aaron Gordon was in that Wiggins thing where it's like, let's go get a guy that just isn't a fit on that team and let's put him in our system. And then the culture behind the scenes of no one caring when the paycheck hits their account, or no one caring about their contract, just dudes who come to work and work hard. I think Tim's trying to instill a lot of that in Minnesota. I know that his name will forever be tied to that Gobert trade, but yeah, I watching how Denver rolled through the playoffs and how they did it as a team and who they did it with, like Malone and some of those assistants and some of those people in the front office, it made me think like, okay, man, like you might have fallen behind the 8 ball, Tim, with their Gobert trade, but you salvaged the Russell situation. And now I think that you'll salvage whatever the next situation is, because he has another major move coming. It could be in 2 weeks. It could be in 16 months, but he's going to have to make another deal because of the CBA. And I find myself trusting him more than I did 2 months ago.
Yeah, I think where I'm at is it's maybe less about Connolly, although I do feel better about Connolly, and even listening to A-Rod, who I don't fully trust that he's always telling the truth. But A-Rod did the media tour with friend of the show, Craig Kilborn. He went on some other shows and just raved about Tim Connolly. But even like beyond Tim Connolly, we're in a stretch now with 5 different NBA champions in the last 5 years. That's the second longest streak without a back-to-back in the NBA's like last 50 years. And that list includes markets like the Denver Nuggets, the Milwaukee Bucks. I just think it's encouraging if you're the Timberwolves and you've now gone to the playoffs back-to-back years. You got Anthony Edwards. You've got other interesting pieces on your team. You're building some blocks here that in the past, even as they were building blocks, like, okay, got a Kevin Love and a Rubio and a Pack, and okay, getting close to 500, or way back in the day, it always felt like, well, that's great, and your upside is second round of the playoffs because there's always a dynasty in Los Angeles or in Miami or somewhere else or San Francisco, right? That's not the case right now, and maybe the new CBA is going to make it where there's even more parity, but the fact that a team like Denver and then a team like Milwaukee, without putting together a super team of 3 supermax players, you have to have at least one Hall of Fame caliber unicorn player. And maybe Anthony Edwards is that for the Timberwolves. And you probably need a second guy like a Jamal Murray or a Chris Middleton or whoever that is. And I'm not saying it's easy to build this roster, but you don't then need also a third Hall of Famer, or like you need to put 8 guys on a roster that have chemistry. 2 of them are all-stars. 1 of them might be a Hall of Famer. And the Wolves have built a pretty good chunk of this. So I remain hopeful that the NBA, that unpredictability in the NBA being back is a good thing for the Timberwolves, I guess, is my long-winded point.
And I also think, too, that 12 months ago even, 12 months ago, people just weren't talking about the Nuggets and their culture and Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon the same way they talk about them now. So as fans, and I am one of them, we want it now. We want, the ultimate just transaction. We want the success right now. And I get that, especially as a Wolves fan, when you haven't had like any success in the last 3 decades. But yeah, like the Jokic to Ant comparison, there's a lot that's not there yet, but Ant's, 7 years younger. But you have that unicorn, right? You have that, as quick aside, if you haven't listened to the Rosillo podcast with CJ McCollum a couple of weeks ago, CJ McCollum had this beautiful analogy of like the league is full of stars, but there's only a handful of planets, and the stars revolve around the planets. It was really good. And, like I would say at this point, Karl-Anthony Towns is a star. Anthony Edwards, to me, is a planet.
I would say he could be a planet. He could be a planet.
Okay, that's fair. And I think the planet analogy also comes into like just the other stuff, right? Like, do players want to play with him? Do players want to change their game? And I think Aaron Gordon is a great example. Like, he is not the player that he was in Denver was not the player he was in Orlando. But he's like, I'm around this planet. I'm just going to be now like this defensive stopper. I really shoot, like, cut, blocks, all that stuff. That's what I would hope Rudy Gobert is in like year 2, right? If he is healthier, if he doesn't play in Euro stuff this summer, like, does he realize, okay, Ant is the planet. I came in, I had the record, I had the 3 defensive player of the year. Like, I've probably had more playoff success than these guys, but a year in, like, this is Ant's team. My boss, Tim Connolly, said it himself. If Rudy Gobert could be like, I'm just going to block shots and rebound and I never have to Hakeem post up again, that might be something that this team kind of benefits from. Same with the Karl. Like, can you fall in line in a sense of knowing who your planet is, and then from there. So yeah, I think the comps are there. There's obviously a lot left to be figured out. Jaden McDaniels isn't Jamal Murray, but the one thing the Wolves have going for them is their duo is the youngest duo, I think, in the league that has shown you something that you can build on.
Yeah, it's going to be, man. And I don't think you should make a panic trade at all here, but you should definitely have the long view of like, is there a move you can make? If you're gonna have to get rid of one of these guys, let's just call it who they are, Gobert or Towns, in a year from now anyways, would you rather do it now and just rip the Band-Aid off and get on with your 3 to 5 year plan? But like we said, we're gonna find out a lot more about that over the next 3 to 4 to 5 weeks here. We do got a run here on Flagrant Howls.
On the Nuggets, last thing, because this is probably the most time sensitive question. Do you think Game 5 against the Heat was the biggest win of the season for them?
For the Nuggets? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was probably pretty close.
I wanted to bring that back. I was watching it. I was like, I got to text someone. Like, you think it's the biggest win of the season for the Nuggets? The confetti's falling down?
Do you still think they're Purdue?
Listen.
I still think they're a fake number 1 seed. They're still a fake number 1 seed.
For all the Denver is Purdue takes that I had that are out there, we also said when we had Kilby on, we both were pretty adamant, right out of the box. 8-1 odds, Nuggets in 5. I think the Nuggets won the championship in 5 games. So whatever mistakes we've made in the past, we have, like Tim Connolly, we have cleaned up. We addressed that. We predicted Nuggets in 5, and I think we have a clean slate moving forward.
Apologies to Kyle's question of the week. We ran out of time.
I do have one for next week, though, and it's about, I'm just going to give you a little teaser. It's about flying. So you have a week to think about what could this be, but I have a really good topic about flying.
Let's go. If you guys could click the subscribe button on the Score North YouTube channel and the like button on this video so we can spread the word about this awesome community of Timberwolves and Minnesota sports fans, and a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts also helps spread the word about this Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. See you guys.